Hi, my name is Katz, Art of Fairy Librarian, and welcome to episode 2 of my little vlog series where I read authors' names. I think I'm just going to call it Reading Authors' Names. If you have suggestions for a better title, you can leave them down below because my creativity in this regard is kind of not there. But in the first episode, I read all the books written by an author named Kate on my TBR. I will link that up here. And at the end of that video, I spun a spinner wheel with some other names that I could possibly do. And I left you on a bit of a cliffhanger, so let's resolve that now. And I picked Alexandra, which you probably already knew because I assume you read the title of this video before clicking on it. But I picked Alexandra, so I will be reading books by authors whose first name is Alexandra. I have two caveats about that. I made the executive decision to do only one book per author because there's one of these authors that I have two books by them on my TBR, and I decided to just make sure that I read every author named Alexandra rather than every book written by Alexandra type thing. So I only have one of them. And then second, I have three books. They're there. Technically, I have a fourth one, but that one is The Jigsaw Christmas Murderer by Alexandra Benedict, which is a Christmas book. And I was like, I'm not gonna read a Christmas book in April. So I kind of vetoed that one, but I have three other ones here. So the first one that I have is the one by the author that I have two books by, and that is Alexandra Rowland. I decided to go with A Taste of Gold and Iron because I'm buddy reading this with Kirsten from the channel Reading Nymph. I'll link her down below. And this is a romantic-y male romance, a prince and a bodyguard, and the world is inspired by the Ottoman Empire, which sounds interesting, but let me read you the synopsis so we're all on the same page. To save their kingdom, will they sacrifice their hearts? Prince Kadu of Arust knows how terrifying it can be to have power, and how dangerously easy it is to misuse it. When a conniving ambassador threatens him, Kadu's attempt to protect himself goes badly awry, resulting in a diplomatic incident. Kadu is humiliated. His sister, the queen, is furious. Desperate to regain her trust, Kadu offers to investigate a break-in at their most important guild, accompanied by his newest bodyguard. Avamar is handsome, flawlessly trained, and coldly furious about the diplomatic blunder. As their investigation unspools, Kadu and Avamar discover a sprawling plot to undermine Arust's power. One false move could topple their kingdom, and when its prince's life is in danger, Avamar proves anything but cold. So yeah, I'm really excited. This has been on my TBR for a very long time. But like, it's one of those books that I keep forgetting that it exists. But then every time I'm reminded, I'm like, oh, I'm so excited for that. It's like one of those. So I'm very happy that I'm finally gonna be able to read it. So this is the first book. Then the second is a book that has been on my TBR for a very, very long time. I think it might be one of the oldest books on my TBR, so it's good that I finally get to read it. And that is Princess of Souls by Alexandra Christo. This is a YA fantasy. It is set in the same world as To Kill a Kingdom, but from what I understand, you can read this book without having read To Kill a Kingdom, which I'm kind of hoping because I don't really have access to Kill a Kingdom. Well, like, I could buy it, obviously, but currently I don't have access to it. So I'm gonna hope that this works well. So let's read the synopsis. There are many who believe they can cheat death. When they fail, I take their souls. Every single one. Celestra is heir to a powerful magic. Locked away in a tower by a cruel king, her destiny is to foretell death and harvest doomed souls to feed his immortality. Nox is a soldier who has spent years plotting vengeance on the crown. Now he's determined to steal the king's immortality and kill his entire court, starting with Celestra. But when Celestra and Nox's futures become intertwined, and death seeks both their souls, they're forced to put their trust in each other. Can they work together to escape their dark fate? So yeah, this sounds fun. It sounds more romantic-y now that I'm reading the synopsis than I thought it was, which is not necessarily a good or a bad thing. I enjoy both YA fantasy and romantasy. So yeah, I'm excited. We'll see what's in. Also, this book. Try and guess how many pages it is based on the appearance of this book. I will tell you, it is 400 pages long. This does not look like a 400-page book. I'm sorry. Anyway, moving on. The third and final book for this video is going to be The Winter Garden by Alexandra Bell. Look at this cover. It is so stunning. I know that it's technically spring, but we can read The Winter Garden. Also, the cover is kind of giving me more spring with like the flowers and the butterflies. I know. But this is a fantasy set in like historical times that gives me, the synopsis kind of gives me Caraval vibes, which I really enjoyed. So I'm excited, but let's read the synopsis. Welcome to the Winter Garden, open only at 13 o'clock. On the night her mother dies, 8-year-old Beatrice receives an invitation to the mysterious Winter Garden, a place of wonder and magic filled with all manner of strange and sublime flora and fauna. The garden is her solace every night for 7 days. When the garden disappears and no one believes her story, Beatrice is left to wonder if it was truly real. 18 years later, on the eve of her wedding to a man her late father approved of, but she does not love, Beatrice makes the decision to throw off the expectations of Victorian English society and search for the garden. But when both she and her closest friend Rosa receive invitations to compete to create spectacular pleasure gardens, with a prize being one life-changing wish, she realizes she may be closer to finding it than she ever imagined. Now all she has to do is win. So yeah, this sounds great. This sounds like a lot of fun. Also, it's a fantasy standalone from, well, actually these all, I think, are fantasy standalones, which is a lot of fun. Like a funny coincidence, because fantasy usually has series. But yeah, I'm really excited. I haven't really heard anyone talk about this. I just saw it one day at the library and I was like, this is fun. But yeah, I'm really, really excited. I had actually also forgotten that this exists, and like when I was searching for like all the Alexandras on my TBR spreadsheet, I was remembered that this one exists, and I'm really excited now. So yay, very happy. That is kind of my goal in this series. It's not necessarily to read down my TBR, because if you've been around on my channel, you know that I don't own that many books in the first place. Like, I read mostly from the library, and so I don't mind having a long list because it's literally just ones and zeros on my computer. But I do this so like I'm reminded of books that I put on there at some point but then forgot about, and so they get never picked, but I am excited for them. So yeah, I'm really really happy with this stack. I mean, they're not the shortest books, so we'll see how long they take me. Because April is also Magical Readathon month, and none of these work for Magical Readathon. So we'll see. But yeah, I am really excited to get to reading. I'll probably, I mean, I know when I'm starting this one, like I'm not starting this until next week, because that's what Kirsten and I agreed on. So like, I'm not going to start with this one. But which one do I start with? That is the question. I'm not sure. I might do Princess of Souls because I think it's, well, it looks. This one is like 500 pages, which is what I said with Princess of Souls. Like, it's like twice as thick and only like 100 pages longer, which is insane. I think I'm going to start with Princess of Souls because it's just one a little bit shorter. So I think that it'll be better to like, they may be able to start this. And also it's on my like TBR game for the month. I managed to get Taste of Golden Iron and Princess of Souls on there, but not the Winter Garden. So I think I'm going to start with this one. And yeah, I'm really excited. This is not necessarily a 5-star prediction for me. It is more like a 4-star prediction. Like, I anticipate having a good time with it, but I don't think it's going to be a new favorite, if that makes sense. Like, I think, when did this come out? Oh, 2022. That is more recent than I thought. I thought this was like a 2010s YA fantasy. Then maybe not as much, but I thought it was like a 2010, and so it would feel very dated. But maybe not if it's 2022. And it's not as long on my TBR as I thought it was. Because like, I have books that have been on there for longer in that case. Yeah, but anyway, I'm still very excited to read this. We'll see how it goes. I'm gonna get reading and I'll talk to you when I have an update. Hi, I'm here with updates, and I realized that my t-shirt really matches the wall, which wasn't a great decision, but that's too late now. But I did start Princess of Souls by Alexandra Christo, and I made it to 50 pages in, and I don't think I'm gonna make it any further. Like, I wanted to get that far because, I mean, I've DNF'd books before that point. Like, I've DNF'd books at any point in a book. I don't feel bad doing that. But then mostly there was something that I could pinpoint that I didn't like about a book. This one, I just couldn't get into it. I wasn't invested. I just didn't really care about what happened, which is a shame because like the concept is pretty interesting, I think. So we are in this world where every year people can make a bargain with the king, and then death will visit them 2 times in the next 2 weeks. And if they can survive that, they can have a wish granted. If they do die, then the king eats their souls, and that is what makes the king immortal. But if instead of 2 weeks they choose to do a full month, if they do survive that, then they become the king. But in like the second half of the month, then the king can sort of start hunting them down. And we are following Celestra, who is a witch in service to being, well, she's still in training, but she gives everyone a prediction of the 2 times of death will visit them. And then we follow Knox, who wants to overthrow the king, and so he's trying to go with a full month, which no one usually does. They usually just go for the wish granted. But he decides to go for the full month. So he goes to the palace and he gets his prediction, and Celestra sees a vision of him dying, but her dying in the same event. And so she's obviously really scared. And things go from there. We're going to have a romance, I presume. But I didn't get to that point really. But I just couldn't get into it. I wasn't that interested in it. Like, a lot of elements feel... I haven't read From Blood and Ash by Jennifer Alexandra, but there you have like the idea of Poppy, who's this maiden who no one can touch her, and she is like really shielded and whatever, and sort of that idea is also true for Celestra. So there was like a link there. Again, I haven't read Jennifer Alexandra, so I don't know how she does it, but it really reminds me of like the premise of that book in that regard. So yeah, I don't know. I just couldn't get into it. I wasn't really invested. And then came the moment that I was like, okay, now so we have this vision. And so Celestra knows that she and Knox have like their first encounter with death the next day. And mind you, we're in Celestra's head. And at this point, she has never given a crap about Knox. She's like, I don't want to die. Okay? She has never thought of, I don't want Knox to die. She's like, I don't want to die. Right? So she wants to prevent this from happening. And so she's like, it happened at a certain location. So if we're not at this location, then it won't happen, right? Good, great thought process. So she's going to go there to prevent Knox from going there. Babe, just stay home. Like, she's not supposed to leave. She's like going out of her way to sneak out of the palace to do this. Like, just stay home. You don't give a crap about Knox. You haven't thought about him once. Why? Like, up until this point in her inner monologue, she's only talked about how she doesn't want to die. So why don't you stay away? Just let the man be killed. I don't get, like, it was just so clear that like the author needed a plot to happen and didn't know how to write it in a convincing way, and just made the character so stupid, which just really annoys me. And I was like, no, I can't, I'm out. So I decided to DNF this. Now, out of the 3 books in this video, like, if you would have told me that I would DNF one out of them, like, I would have guessed this one. This is the one that I went in with like the least high expectations, with just not knowing how I would feel about it. So like, it's fine. Like, I don't mind this. It's a book off my TBR. I didn't go in thinking that I would love this. So it's fine. I'll survive. But so yeah, I will not be continuing Princess of Souls. I did start A Taste of Gold and Iron. I'm about a third-ish of the way through, and I'm really enjoying this. So in this book, we are following Prince Cadu, who has caused this scandal. So there was this hunting party where his guards interpreted a certain action as an assault on the prince, and so they tried to intervene, but it wasn't that, probably. So some guards ended up dying, and Cadu, he decides to take the blame for it, even though it wasn't his fault, but he does that to protect this guard that initiated the intervention. And so there's this big scandal going on. But so since 2 guards died, the prince needed a new guard, obviously. So he gets a new one, which is Evamer. I still not sure how to pronounce that, but I'm gonna go with Evamer. And Evamer heard of the scandal, and where 2 of his friends, mentors, died. So he's not very happy with the prince. So we have this like prince and this guard that, well, this guard that really doesn't like the prince, but the prince who has a lot of like self-loathing, has really low confidence. Like I really feel for him. He feels very guilty about a lot of things that happen. And yeah, we're just following them as they get to know each other a little bit more, as Evamer starts to see Cadu for who he really is, like this really kind and caring person who just wants the best for everyone, but it just feels deeply insecure in himself and feels a lot of guilt for certain things that happened because of him, or certain things that even he had no control over. And yeah, I just really love it. I especially love them trying to find ways to figure out each other, or like when we're in Evamer's perspective, we like constantly see him like shifting his image that he has of Cadu. Like every time something happens, like, oh, but from this, I kind of, deduct this personality trait. And how does that rhyme with other things that I know about Cadu and other things that I've seen? And maybe there's certain assumptions that I have that I don't really have evidence of, that now I have evidence to the contrary. So I just adjust it. Like stuff like that, which I just think is really beautiful. And this is how I win my romances. Like, it's really cute, really beautiful. They're just building this foundation of care for each other, of respect for each other, of trust in each other. So I think that the romance in this is very well done. I also really like the world building in this. So it's a little bit inspired by the Ottoman Empire, which I do enjoy, but also we have this very queer norm society. First of all, Cadu and Evamer, it's a male-male romance, but no one thinks anything of that. There are non-binary characters that are just existing, like their pronouns is the only thing that you really notice that they are non-binary, which I really, really like. Also, I really enjoy, we have Cadu's sister is the Sultan, and I really like sort of how that is passed on, because in this world, like, the mother is sort of the line that passes on everything, basically, which makes sense, because that is like the only parent that you can like 100% definitively sure of, biologically speaking. Then I mean, there is DNA testing, but like, you know what I mean. And so the Sultan, female Sultan, deliberately doesn't marry so that no other family would have a claim on the heir to the throne. And so it's very normal for her to have multiple lovers all at the same time. I mean, just generally that is like more accepted in this society. There are like love marriages in the lower classes. But other than that, it is very normal for like a female sultan to just have a bunch of men that she's sleeping with, and then we don't know whose child it is anyway. For a male sultan, it is kind of paramount to marry because otherwise he wouldn't have a claim to his, they call them body children, so like the body father and the body children, because yeah, technically there is like a biological link, but he doesn't really, as I said, have any claim to the child. He's not legally considered the father of the child, which I think is very interesting. But the body father of the heir now, because the book sort of starts with Zahila, which is Sultan / Kadu's sister, giving birth to a child, and the body father, who we know for certain because he's the only man that she slept with for a long time, and like everyone knew that, is not from this country. He's from a different country, and he thinks that he has a claim on this child from his culture, and he considers himself as like very important because he is the heir's father, even though in this world that is totally not the case. And also he is the one who like the guards thought was attacking the prince, and I think that he was. I don't trust him for one bit. So I think that he is going to also use his, like he's going to claim this child to get power, or try to do that at least, and just, or at least maybe I think that's what he did try, and maybe he noticed that it failed, so we need to go a bit more drastic. I don't know. I don't trust him. He is up to something more. I know it. Also, the guard that initiated the thing where the other girls got killed, which is Tarek, I also didn't trust him. He had this like little sex relationship with the prince. Like, we don't know how deep it goes. They sort of, it's just, you know, his guard, and then well, it's actually a little bit more than his guard, but I'm just gonna say for convenience sake, and for brevity's sake. But then he, you know, they started having a bit of a relationship, or situationship, I should probably more call it. But I don't trust Tarek. I think he's using the prince to get power. That is my thing. I could very well be wrong, but there's certain things that he does that I don't trust. So, yeah, we'll see. There is the prince has some mental health things going on, and I really like how those are handled, and just how those are represented, where it is kind of, I don't know if it's stigmatized necessarily, but it's like not really, like these girls are trained medically, but they don't know how to deal with this because they don't really know what it is, type of thing. So we have this society that is not like really mental health literate. I don't know, but they do have a lot of compassion, Kadu, and they try to help him as best as he can, which I just think is very beautiful. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this. We have just the prince is like a couple of people that are really care for him and are there for him and love him, even if he can't always see it. And yeah, it's just very beautiful, and I love it. And yeah, I'm gonna read more of it. It's very easy to read. You have a bit of a mystery plot going on as well, which is like just about starting. So I'll talk about that in the next update. But yeah, I'm having a great time with this. I'm buddy reading this with Kirsten, and she is really enjoying it as well. So yeah, I will talk to you once I have more to say about this. Okay, we're trying something for the angle. I'm lying down. I actually don't hate it. We'll see if I do this more. But I'm 2/3 the way through A Taste of Golden Iron. I don't have that much to update on, except I'm freaking loving this. This is so cute. Like, I'm smiling. I have all the warm fuzzies. I'm kicking my feet with, well, Kadu and Evamur, but also just the other characters too. Like, just the character dynamics and the deep love that you see between like all the characters in here is just so beautiful and cute, and I love it. So yeah, I'm having a fantastic time with this so far. It is very easy to read, like I'm eating it up. And also just the plot is very interesting. I didn't really talk about the plot earlier, so let's do it now. So we're having, so in this country, like they have the money, like the coins are all over the world very trusted because they never debase them, so they stay like not entirely pure gold, because like you can't really, you have to do like a little bit of other stuff in there to physically be able to make the coins, but they're like 99 point something percent or 98 point something percent pure gold. So they've always been that way. They're very trustworthy, and so that it's really good for this country's economy. Like the economy of this country is just generally very good. But now they discovered a few coins that are being made that have less gold in them and more other stuff. And so they're trying to figure out who's behind this, because if they come into circulation too much in other countries, find out, then that'll have consequences for the economy of Arist. And so we're trying to figure out that, and it's really interesting. There is one point in the book where like it was kind of an info dump, but Kadu was just drunk and like, you know, like drunk rambles. It's like an info dump, like how money works and why this is such a big problem and what this all means and stuff, which I thought was very interesting. And you have Evamur listening like, yeah, I know how money works. I've been living in this country for like my entire life. I know what money is and how it works. But he was like, just keep talking though, because I live where you talk, which is just very funny, because like, and I really like how that info dump is him, because we see it through the perspective of Evamur, who was also like, yeah, I know all of this, you don't need to tell me, which is, you know, makes it kind of realistic, because you wouldn't, you know, it's not the thing where like characters are telling each other things that they should already know type of deal. Also, we as a reader already know a bunch of this, so you can kind of relate to Evamur being like, yeah, I know. But it's also kind of cute, because like Kadu is just drunk and Evamur's like, this is kind of cute, I like this, keep talking, which just, yeah, love that. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it. Like the stakes are getting higher and higher. Like in the beginning it was pretty, oh, you know, just like we're kind of trying to figure it out, but it wasn't, the effects for like our characters themselves weren't that important or that big, or like the stakes for our characters weren't that big. We've gotten to a point where they've just risen and risen, which I find really interesting. I had one theory that isn't fully confirmed, but parts of it are being confirmed at the point I'm at in the book. So I think I'm right. So yeah, I'm really, really enjoying this. I'm going to finish this and I'll give you my final thoughts. But I think, unless like the ending was really wrong, I think this is going to be a 5-star, which is very excited. Like I haven't loved the book this much in quite a while, so yay, very happy. Okay, I finished A Taste of Golden Iron, and I really enjoyed this entire book. I don't know what much I can tell you that I haven't already told you. But the plot got pretty intense at the end. Like the stakes got upped, the pacing got upped, and things started moving along in terms of the plot. And I really like them. I was right about things, which is great. And yeah, just the romance in this was very cute. The way that concluded was nice. There is one thing though, just it's not a big thing, but like I need to say something, right? Like a world building thing that in my head doesn't fully make sense. So it's like a very sex positive, queer norm world, but they also have this thing that in a marriage, like, you know, like the historical thing of like a marriage can become undone as long as it hasn't been consummated. So basically, in order for the marriage to be like completely indefinitely fulfilled, you need to have sex. Except we're in a society where like it is very normal to just have very casual sex with people. And those two things just don't make sense with one another, right? Because that means that if you were to have sex with someone, then marry them, then that could still, then like you're not properly married. Whereas if you marry first and then have sex, then you are. Which just doesn't seem like, it seems weird because like in a, you know, in a world where, you know, sex before marriage is not really socially accepted, it makes sense to have that rule because like as long as you haven't had sex within the marriage, it is kind of expected that you just haven't had sex at all, right? So that, I get that. But in this world, that particular thing just doesn't really work. So like that's, and it is a bit of a plot point. Like it did create some like fun and funny situations, but still, I'm a little, I don't know, it's a little bit odd for this world, I think. But that is really my biggest point of critique. I really enjoyed this. I am giving it 5 stars. I was kicking my feet. It has been quite a while since I've enjoyed a book so much as I have A Taste of Golden Iron. So, you know, take my tangent as like just a little thing that I noticed, but it's not a big deal. It didn't really influence my experience all too much, but yeah. That is A Taste of Golden Iron. I highly recommend. Yeah. So then I have one more book left for this video, and that is The Winter Garden, which I'm gonna start now. So I'm gonna talk to you when I have an update. I'm really, really excited for this. I think it's gonna be great, and yeah, I'm excited. Okay, I made it to the 200-page mark in The Winter Garden, which is the end of chapter 15. And I have thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts. This book is quite different from what I thought it would be, so let's talk about it. So, the synopsis talks about, this garden appearing and in this competition to be able to return to this garden. And from that, I was kind of expecting, not quite Caraval, but something like in that direction, which is not what this is. It is pretty different. Also, the competition thing, we've heard nothing of it yet, and like I'm almost halfway through. So if you go into it wanting a competition book, note that's not what we're getting. Like, it is quite fast paced though, so it's not just that like nothing happened so far, just other stuff have happened. So we are following two main characters, Beatrice and Rose. We actually start off with Beatrice in the prologue when she's 8 years old, and she loses her mother in a pretty traumatic way, because she had the chance to say a final goodbye, but she didn't, so she feels guilt over that. And on top of that, her dad is absolutely horrible and just really mean, and like literally says to her like, yeah, it's your fault that your mom left this world brokenhearted because you didn't say goodbye, and so she suffered because of you, which just, imagine saying that to an 8-year-old who just lost her mother. I cannot. But so, pretty traumatic thing. And so that night, the Winter Garden appeared for her, and the few nights after that, but then it no longer came, and then like the main story moved forward to later, and her sort of still being obsessed with this garden, her still thinking of this garden even though no one wants to believe her that it actually exists and that she actually went there. But she like took a little trinket back with her every time she went, and so she still has them to sort of prove to herself that it was real and that she actually was there, even if other people tried to, tell her like, oh no, this little thing must be from somewhere else. And then the other main character, Rose, she, at first I thought she would be more of a side character, but most of the chapters have been from her POV so far. Like Beatrice has sort of popped up here and there, but it's mostly actually from her. And so we open like the book when Beatrice is 25, and she is about to get married, but she leaves the man for the altar. So she just runs off. And this man, this Duke, because it's set in the 1830s, instead proposes to Beatrice's friend Rose. And Rose she grew up in the United States, then moved to England, and while she has a lot of wealth, she is not part of the English nobility, and so they all really look down on her. And so she has been really longing for like a title and sort of to be officially part of this aristocratic world. And so when this Duke proposes to her, she says yes immediately. And so we see her life being married to this Duke. That is what the story is so far. And it's actually quite interesting because through Rose, we sort of get a glimpse into what Beatrice's life would have been had she continued on with this wedding. And it is quite sad because this Duke is very abusive. We see glimpses of that early on, but then after he is married to Rose, we really get to see that in full action. Part of that abuse is in the form of marital rape, so definitely content warnings for that. And it escalates relatively quickly in that regard. But as I said, there were these warning signs early on. He is quite coercive in other aspects early on too. He also just, going from Beatrice to Rosa, he seems to target people who are kind of in a weaker position in society, but are able to give him a lot of wealth because both of them are heiresses, and so their money and everything would go to him after they married. But as already said, we have Rosa, who is shunned a little bit because she is not from England, she's not nobility, etc. And then we have Beatrice, who stutters. And with that, we have some very horrible ableism regarding that of people trying to fix her. That actually was the what's the expression in English? It's like the straw that broke the camel's back. Is that the expression? Where like the day before the wedding, the Duke's mother, but probably the Duke, let this doctor come to fix Beatrice, and Beatrice was like, I'm not having to just sit here and let you insult me like that. I don't need fixing. I'm perfectly fine, even if I stutter. I do not want this. I never asked for this, so get this doctor the fuck out of my face. And so, yeah, we have that. We have Rosa's unhappy marriage, to say the least. So they both are in a position where they thought that they wanted to be where they are, because we have Rosa, who is a duchess and married and all that. And then we have Beatrice, who is not married, who just gets to travel the world to discover nature and do discoveries and search for this garden, which she always wanted. but they're both still really fundamentally unhappy. And yeah, that is just very interesting to see in that regard, and you know, them both lacking stuff and living in a world that is just harder for women than it is for men. I was really worried at first because with Beatrice we seem to fall into that feminist TM, not like other girls type of historical fiction, which I really don't like. I think it's very unnuanced and just, yeah, I think that it doesn't really do that much. I was scared that this book would fall into that, but I feel like it has other things complicating the matter, and it does create more nuance in that regard. And because we have sort of Rosa to offset her, who does, in not every way, but in a lot of ways, embody the societally approved ideal of how a woman should live. You know, she's married, she wants kids, etc., and is still, you know, in a position where she, you know, isn't fully happy. So that is very interesting to see, and I do like how that is all handled. For Beatrice, we also got to a point where she's kind of in a pretty depressed state at this point. And I highlighted 2 quotes in regards to that I really liked, so I would like to read them for you. So the first one: how much more straightforward it was to bear a physical illness or malady. We need not do anything but rest, and the body simply healed itself. Miseries of the mind, however, were quite another matter. They were a sticky spider's web, and Beatrice had learned that the more you struggle against them, the tighter the strands seem to bind you. I did think that was like a very nice way to like phrase the, you know, how hard it is to really heal from mental illness and trauma and depression, and that just relapse very often. Whereas with like a physical illness, like that is more visible and is taken more seriously, but is much easier to heal in a lot of ways. So yeah, it's very interesting. And then we have later on to the doctor's office for her depression, and the doctor doesn't really take her seriously. Of course, he's like, oh, everyone's a little sad sometimes. Like there must be a reason why you're feeling this way. And then it says, well, in our monologue, she doesn't actually say this, but winter makes me sad sometimes. So does summer. The despair might be set off by recalling a moment from the past, or by feeling out of place in a crowded room, or by the nightingales returning in May. It makes no sense. It's a sadness that can creep up on me, even in my happiest hours, because this sadness has legs, and it follows me wherever I go, and whatever I happen to be doing, and whomever I'm with. It might be triggered by a genuinely upsetting event, but most of the time, there is no reason to it. No logic. No discernible cause at all. Which I also just found very relatable, just this deep sense of sadness that just sometimes comes to you, even in moments where you don't know where it's coming from. You don't really know what you're feeling bad about, but you just feel bad. And yeah, I like that too. So I chat that one as well. Now we're at the time of reading quotes. I had another one highlighted that is not necessarily about this, but I also liked, so I also wanted to share with you. I cannot seem to escape the conviction that sometimes it's important to ask the hopeless question regardless. Perhaps you owe it to the peace of mind of your future self, and certainly you must owe it to those who are no longer here and so do not have the privilege of being able to pursue their own happiness. That's also a thing that, like, I can kind of relate to. So, like, knowing that you won't succeed at something, or, like, the answer to a question will be no, but just knowing that you'll never be able to forgive yourself if you don't at least try. So I did like this quote as well. So yeah, I think that the writing itself is very beautiful in a lot of ways. And I do like that. I wish, however, that there were more descriptions of the garden. Like, that was kind of what I hoped from this book, like very lush nature description, but it's very lacking in that regard. Like, when Beatrice goes there for the first time, we get 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of description, and then she leaves. So all the description we get when we encounter the garden is: skeletal trees proudly wore their winter crowns, and glass lanterns hung from bare branches, flickering like something from a fairy world. The air filled of snow and magic, and steaming cups of hot chocolate. That's it. 2 sentences. That's it. And then Beatrice. It says, like, she walks around for a little bit and then leaves. And I was like, that's it. That is all the description we're going to get. There were other moments that came later, though, that something would happen, or Beatrice would see something that would remind her of the garden, and it would be like a short little snippet of the thing it reminds her of and why it reminds her of that. So, like, we got a little bit more after that, but still not that much. And so for that, I am quite disappointed in this, because that is really what I hoped from this book and what I was looking forward to. And I think that in that regard, the writing is a little lacking for me. But other than that, I am really enjoying it. It reads very quickly. It's quite fast-paced too, like a lot happens. At one part, though, we have Beatrice traveling the world to, like, where she discovers new species of butterflies and plants and whatever. And similarly to the lack of description of the winter garden, we also don't really get any of that. Like, there is a certain point where there is this letter exchange between Rosa and Beatrice where they, like, briefly give, like, a summary of what is happening in their life. And so we mostly hear about it from there. Like, we start that chapter off in July, and then we get letters, and when the letters are over, it's already February of the next year. And like we just don't get a lot of it. Like I think then we get like 2 chapters with Beatrice before she's back in England, and like in neither of those chapters she's like actually out in nature exploring. So that is also a little disappointing. Like I wanted more on that front. I realized I haven't said anything about the magic system yet, so let's do that. We don't really, like, aside from like the magic of this garden that just shows up every once in a while and like drops little hints is not quite the right word, but like little sort of indications that it exists, and those who recognize them, those who've been to the garden, know what they're looking at, but to others it may not appear very strange. So that is a thing. But also, Rosa is an artificer, and so she makes these mechanical animals who are like actually sentient and have a personality and a soul, she says a couple times, which is very interesting. We don't really know how that works or anything. We know that she can like program them to do certain things, but we don't know how it works, and I'm very, very intrigued. There are, I will say that it doesn't really bother me, but I'm saying that like in case it might bother you, that you can go and know in this, that there are certain things that, like, it is set in the 19th century, and there are certain viewpoints that characters have that, you know, feel very 19th century. And some of those are challenged, like the ableism, for example, is challenged, but others aren't. Like, for example, Rosa's family were slave owners. She grew up on a plantation, and that is not really addressed in any way. And for me personally, I don't mind that, because realistically in this world, Rosa does not really have a reason to challenge the idea of slavery and to challenge her upbringing, and neither has Beatrice really. So I feel like it makes it feel a lot more real to me, because that is also a bit of a pet peeve of mine when we have a book set in the past and everyone has viewpoints that were common at the time, except our main character. She is like a fully evolved 21st century social justice, DEI, woke, whatever that means, person, for no, like, and there's no real explanation given as to how she got to any of those ideas, because everyone around her is bigoted. That is a bit of a pet peeve of mine, and that feels very like eye-rolly and nuanced to me. I hope I'm making sense with what I'm saying there. So I'm not, I don't mind that characters, even the ones who are supposed to be good guys, have certain bigoted, harmful, horrible ideals. But I wanted to let you know in case that is something that you like to avoid in your books, that you can be aware that that is in here. But so yeah, that is my, I don't know, 40-ish% thoughts of the Winter Garden. I think I talked long enough for now. So I'll read some more and I'll talk to you when I have more thoughts. Okay, I finished the Winter Garden. And let's talk about it. I've been kind of putting off filming this because this book confuses me. And not in the way that like the plot doesn't make sense or I don't understand what's happening. I'm just very confused at like certain choices that the author made in how she would tell this story and just how this book came to be. So where do I start? So like the premise of this book, right, is about Beatrice who lost her mother, then went to this garden, never was able to find it again, and has this competition which gives her an opportunity to find this garden again, right? And all those elements are in here. And I believe that that is what the author planned the story to be at first. But that is not what this is. Because Beatrice is a side character in this book. It's much, much more about Rosa and her marriage to Eustace. And that intersects with the Winter Garden and the competition. But Beatrice is not the main character. Except, like, the prologue is about Beatrice. The start also makes it feel as if it's going to be about Beatrice. And then the ending is an ending to the book that would be about Beatrice, like the book that is mentioned in the synopsis, but not an ending for this book. It really feels as if Belle had planned to write Beatrice's story as it was told in the synopsis, except as she was writing it, she realized that as she was writing it, it sort of turned more and more into Rosa's story, except she couldn't really accept that she was writing Rosa's story, not Beatrice's, and so just continued to act as such. She'd written Beatrice's book all along, which she hadn't. Which I just find very confusing. Like, I think, just trying to put myself in the author's head, this is speculation, of course, I can't read the author's minds, but I think that she initially did mean to tell Beatrice's story and then have Rosa there a little bit to sort of show what Beatrice's life could have been, because that is a big part of this book, like what would have happened if at a certain point you had made a different choice. So I think that was like the purpose of Rosa at first, but she focused so much on Rosa that Beatrice became a side character. And so because of that, the ending felt very unearned. Like, the sentiments were nice, but it just didn't feel, it rang hollow. Because the build-up just was not there. So yeah, that left me a little bit at the end. And like, don't get me wrong, like the themes that it's exploring are nice. It's like talks about, as I said, like what if, like what if you had made a different choice at a certain point? What could your life have been? And about regret in that regard. but also sort of the notion that that is just a part of life, and those questions and that regret will always be there, because there is no one perfect life that you could have had if only you had always made the correct decision. And like, there's not one path to happiness, there is not one true love in your life. Like, yes, a certain decision you make might close a path to one happy life or one love or whatever, but it opens the path to another. And so you, like, not the, oh, everything happens for a reason type thing, but like the, every situation has its pros and cons. And yeah, some can suck more than others, but are you willing to give up, or if possible, to change? Would you be willing to give up the good things that this life has brought you? The people that you've met and grown to love, would you be willing to give them up if you had the opportunity to change life paths to this other thing? And like, you know, is a trade-off worth it type of thing? Like, what is more important to you? The things that exist that you would have to give up, and the people that actually exist that you have to give up, or the potential of a different life? And I thought that was really nice. That was, yeah, I like that. So like, thematically, that aspect I did think was done well. And I liked Rose's development in that regard. But yeah, I don't know. The ending felt a little weird. Something else that I wish would have been done differently. So we have Beatrice and Rosa, who are both building this garden, and I do like how they're sort of opposing each other in that regard, because we have Beatrice, who is an explorer and who has traveled the world to discover amazing plants, animals, whatever, and so she brings those home to England to put in our garden, whereas Rosa is an artificer, and so she makes like a lot of mechanical things to put in our garden. So we have like a very different vibe. They oppose each other in a lot of ways. You have like Beatrice is like kind of associated with ice, and then Rosa is kind of associated with fire within the book, and a few other things that they like, you know, sort of oppose each other in the narrative. So like, that is kind of interesting. But anyway, I already mentioned Rosa's creations, that they kind of have the sentience, which at first I didn't really know how to feel about that, because it felt just a little bit odd to me. But I wasn't really sure how to, yeah, how to feel about that. So I kind of ignored it. But then with Beatrice's garden, which we sort of get more in the second half, has magical plants. And I mean, there were from the start in Beatrice's garden, there were always like these magical apple trees. But those were, that was because she planted apple seeds that she took with her from the winter garden, one of the times that she went there as a kid. So like, it makes sense for those to be magical, because like, they come from a magical garden, right? But these are just random plants that like supposedly exist in this world, because it's in our world, that just like exist. And also no one has questions about the bee of magic. Like, you have people who are really excited and are very like in awe, but that's just because these are like plants that don't grow in England and come from around the world, and so they're shiny and new for the English upper class to enjoy. But it didn't feel like any different than, you know, like enthusiasm that would have actually happened about just exotic plants and stuff that they hadn't seen before, and sort of this ooh and ah and oh yeah, look how wealthy I am because I can own this many of this type of land, which is very expensive. So that was just really odd to me, and also kind of diminishes the magic of the winter garden. Because at first I was like, ooh, the winter garden has magical plants, really cool. But if the normal world also has magical plants and animals and whatever, then the winter garden is just a garden. There's not much special about it. So I don't get the obsession with it. Like, I'm sure that like Beatrice liked it and she was kind of happy there. So I get it from like Beatrice's perspective, but we sort of get these like explorers all want to find this garden, and they're like a bunch of legends about it, and like they've all heard it, and they're like trying to chase like little indications of this garden, where I'm like, there is nothing that special about it. If this type of magic is also just there. And like Rosa is able to make magical stuff. Like, she just builds things that are magical, and there's never an explanation how they got that magic. Rosa doesn't seem to know either. Or maybe she, I don't know. So like, if you can just create, if any person can just create magic, I don't get what the deal is with this winter garden. Really odd. One thing notice, they have Beatrice and Rosa has a friend whose name is James, and he's an orchid hunter, which there were some like interesting things. Explorers is a big word because like explorers imply that they were like a bigger focus and more developed than they were, but like a few mentions of like, oh, what of, yeah, when people of like, oh yeah, when an orchid hunter finds a place where there are orchids, like they're gonna want to max out on that because orchids are very expensive and this job is quite dangerous, like this mission is quite dangerous, so you want to have as many orchids from one trip as possible. And also, if you can like eliminate the competition by like taking away all of the orchids in this area, then that is also a nice little extra. So they kind of sometimes ruin ecosystems because they just take all of them, which was interesting. I could have had more of that, but whatever. That was in there. I liked it. A lot of orchids in the book, which, fun fact about orchids, the word orchid is derived from the ancient Greek words orchion, which means testicle. So now you will never be able to look at orchids the same way again, because every time you will know that they were literally named after genitalia. You're welcome. But yeah, we do get more descriptions of like the plants and stuff in the latter half, but like from Beatrice's garden, not anything else, really. And there's some cool stuff in Beatrice's garden. I'll give her that. There's some really cool stuff. I do have something to say, but it's a bit spoilery, so I'll do a spoiler section. But first, is there something else I need to mention? Well, yeah, the Rose's marriage with Eustace, which is like the focus of the book, which, as I already said, is very abusive. I think that was depicted well. And Rosa and Eustace are actually the only two characters in this book that are properly developed. But I think that, like, especially for Eustace, I really get a picture of, like, the type of person that he is, and sort of him being a very, like, abusive and mean and terrible person, but him thinking that he's like the perfect gentleman and he's being so reasonable, and he is actually the victim because, of course, Rosa putting things in place to protect herself and protect her children from him, of course, means that Rosa is abusing him because, God forbid, he can't rape his wife anymore. Or God forbid, he can't physically punish his children when they are crying, which they're going to do because they're literal babies. So there is one point where, like, he does try to harm one of the children as they are babies, which Rosa is able to intervene before it gets, like, well, the baby does feel pain in the moment and is, I assume, immensely scared, so it's not like no harm was caused, but physically she was all right. So you know yourself best on whether you can and want to read that or not. Also, one of the children dies while we're at content warnings, not from abuse, but that also happens. So just be aware of that going in. Where was I? Oh yeah, Eustace being a piece of shit. He's just also very coercive and does everything in his power to get Rosa to do what he wants, when he wants it, and the way he wants it. And he'll go far for that. And I thought it was very heartbreaking to see Rosa thinking that she has found a way where she has, like, regained a little bit of control, where she can just live without Eustace controlling her and her body. But then Eustace is always going a step further and is always finds people that help him go that step further and enable him to, and enable him to exert this control over his wife, which is just so heartbreaking to read. And, like, Rosa's hopelessness and her thing of, like, oh, I need to get out of the situation, except I have nowhere to go. So yeah, I think that their marriage, like the abusive marriage, was depicted pretty well. I think that is what I have to say. Spoiler free. I do have like 2 things to mention that are kind of spoilery, so if you don't want to hear those, skip the next section. There'll be timestamps in the description, as well as like something on screen indicating that we're in spoiler territory that will disappear at the end. So yeah, spoilers starting now. I hope you skip this if you don't want them. Beatrice is revealed to be some sort of chosen one. Like, she has this special relationship to the garden. She's the first visitor. And like in depictions, like in art of the garden and stories, she is present as well. Which, when that was revealed, I was like, okay then. I really did not need that. I did think that then at the end, when we learn how the Winter Garden came to be, namely her mother, right before she died, had written Beatrice a letter in which she also mentions like hopes and wants for the future, and one of those would be like, I hope you get to see the garden that we dreamed of together, in like a few descriptions of what this garden looked like. Except Beatrice never read this letter because she was an 8-year-old who just lost her mother, and so she was really grief-stricken and mad at the world, and she didn't want it, so she like chucked the letter in a wishing well that was in her garden. And so like the wishing well did its magic and created the Winter Garden, which then appeared for the first time that evening. So like when that happened, I was like, okay, yeah, sure. I liked it a little bit more. It felt unearned a little bit because, as I said, it is like it's the ending to a different book. But I was like, fine, okay. And the wishing well, I said the plants being magic, that I didn't like that. I wish that it would just like be the wishing well that was magic, and like the plants in this world, like in our world, to just be normal plants. But then like the wishing well just could do its magic and create the Winter Garden. That was fine for me. I think, yeah, if we're gonna have a magical element in our modern world, no, modern, historical, in our real life world, then I would have been fine with the wishing well, just not nature. So yeah, I don't know. One of the things that bothers me most about nature being magical and Rosa being able to create these magical objects is that it creates kind of a plot hole in the characters' motivations, because both of them want to win this competition because that means that they get a wish, and they both want to rectify something in their life. Beatrice wants to go back to when she was 8, right before her mother dies, because she wants to say a last goodbye to her. And then Rosa wants to go back and prevent her from marrying Eustace. So they're like both competing for this garden, except then at some point Rosa makes this carousel, which is the carousel of icicles, and if you write it, you sort of get transported back to a certain memory. You can sort of relive it. And then Beatrice has this plum tree in her garden that like it's like a plum rain. I don't exactly know what happens. Just like plums falling down. I'm not sure. It's the way it's described is a little. I don't know how to visualize it. But if you like reach out your hand under it, you get to sort of see a vision of what your life could have been if a certain decision, if you've made a certain, what your life could have been if at a certain point you had made a different decision than you did. And then we have like one of Rose's horses at the carousel eats one of the plums. And so from that point onward, if you write that horse, you get to change a past decision that you regret. So like, they have an opportunity, like both of them. Except in the event that caused one of the horses to eat one of the plums, Rosa kind of destroys part of Beatrice's garden. And so Beatrice is so freaking mad at her because Rosa now ruined her chances of making things right with her mother. Except she knows about the horse that can let you change a decision. And instead of being like, how about, I know I'm not going to win anymore because like part of my garden is destroyed, but how about I just ride this horse and do the thing that I was going to do when I win, if I can't win? No, that never came to mind. She's just mad at Rosa till the end of time for something that had a very clear and obvious solution. Like, I get that she's mad for like destroying the garden. I would still be mad about that. But like, you had your opportunity. And you didn't. So like, anyway, that was all I had to say for spoilers. I'm very conflicted about this book overall. There are certain parts that I really liked, certain elements that I think were very well done, other elements that confused me. I think I'm going to give it a 3.5 stars because overall I did enjoy my reading experience. And as I said, I think there are some really good elements in here. That is my verdict for now. Let's grab the other books and wrap this video. Okay, here we have the 3 books. If I were to rank them from my least favorite to my most favorite, I would put Princess of Soul at the bottom. I DNF this. Just characters being dumb. Then The Winter Garden, 3.5 stars. Some elements I really liked. Some elements I have so many questions. So yeah. But overall I enjoyed it, but just I do have a lot of criticisms too. And then at the top, A Taste of Golden Iron, which I enjoyed so much. I like the only negative thing I can think of is like a very nitpicky thing that doesn't really matter. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. 5 stars. Great. I tried to make a little ranking of like the different episodes in this series. So like what author name produces the best book, which is a totally related thing. So I had a DNF, which for the average, I do like 0 stars, except for like dividing by how many books. It only counts as a half book. I feel like that was a nice trade-off. And then 3.5 and 5, so that is 8.5 divided by 2.5, which is an average of 3.4 stars, which is lower than the Kate's. It's not too bad. It could have been a lot worse. So yeah, currently we have to come to the conclusion that Alexandras don't write better books than Kate's. We'll see what the next episode brings. I already spun for what name is going to be the next episode. I'll insert that clip here. And as you can see, it's going to be Robert, which means that next episode will be relatively big. I didn't look at like what exact books are going to be because it's going to be a few months until I film that, and I want the books to still feel kind of fresh at that point. So I didn't look at the exact books, but I have like a little list of each name, like how many books, or like each name on the wheel and how many books they are. It says 4, but I'm very bad at updating that list, so I don't know if I've added Job of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett. Because like when I saw Robert, I was like, oh, a Job of Corruption. I don't know if I've added that, so it might be 5. So yeah, pretty big episode. Like I know that Job of Corruption is going to be there, which I'm quite excited about. So that's good. And then also like a Robert Harris will be in the mix. I don't know what the other ones would be. Maybe a nonfiction. I don't know. I would have to look. Yeah, you'll see that in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you have read any of these books, please let me know. If we're gonna do emojis, let's do emojis. I do like it when creators do emojis because sometimes I have nothing to say and I just want to say hi, but I don't know what to say. So if you want that, leave some like money thing for A Taste of Golden Iron, because that was my favorite book in the video. And I hope to see you soon in a video.